What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday here at DSM-Media. We are live here on the Phaithful Phanatics show on DSM-Media's Philadelphia YouTube channel. Guys, if you want to support, if you are new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button. It's the best spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here on the screen with your host. I am one half of them this morning, Dylan Davis. To my right, my faithful co-host. The Sixers continue their hot start, winning 5 straight on the young season. They take on the Boston Celtics tonight. We're going to talk about their win over the Washington Wizards, as well as what this test at home versus the Celtics early in the season means for them. And the Eagles head into the bye week, basically at the midway point of their season. We're going to be giving out some midterm grades. What are some concerns you have going forward? What are their biggest strengths? We're going to talk about it all. But my man, happy hump day. And what is going on?
Happy hump day, man. Happy to have some sports back today. Obviously, we were a little dry last evening. I know you hit me up last night. Said something about a Baylor game. I didn't even know
that Baylor bet in, bro.
I checked out of sports last night, man. I know there was some hockey going on, and there was like Champions League.
You need those nights every now and then, unless you're a degenerate like myself,
man. Night off.
Unless you're a degenerate like myself, you're betting Florida Gulf Coast plus 12.5. At 6:30,
I laid like a $5 NHL parlay, and riddle me this, man. It's funny. I never bet on the NHL. I just
what'd you lose by? Just the Flyers?
Funny enough, man. I swear to God, yes. Yeah, I laid like almost every single favorite last night. I just put it on a $5 parlay. It was a free bet. Just wanted to throw my money away, I guess.
Yeah.
And of course, everything hit, but the Flyers at minus 190 money line. They lose to an 0-11 team. So
that they do.
There we go.
It's becoming a habit with the Flyers, man. Obviously, we haven't talked about them a lot. Not sure that our viewers would be in love with talking about them right now. A lot of the Flyers conversation to look to, kind of towards the future in a positive light. Has to be hypothetical, right? You have we talked about the Mitch Cobb draft pick, and when he comes over, and the Jonesy and the Danny Briere regime obviously shedding bad contracts, like they're heading in the right direction. But to talk about this team on a night-to-night basis right now, I mean, for God's sake, a couple years ago, a couple years ago, the Coyotes started the season 0-11, 0-12. They snapped it against the Flyers.
Yeah.
The Sabres had like a 18-game losing streak. They win against the Flyers.
I saw
this year. The Sharks 0-11 win against the Flyers. So I don't know what it is with them, man. If they're just generous, if they're just nice opponents to get you off the Schneider or whatever it is, but they love to help out 0-4 kind of teams, man. But speaking of a team that's definitely not 0-4 and put another notch in the W column the other night. That is our Sixers, man, as they take down the Washington Wizards on Monday night, 146-128. Joel Embiid yet again does not play in the fourth quarter because he does not need to, and he has literally an historic third quarter. Scotty, in 31 minutes of play, Joel Embiid grabbed 11 boards, had 6 assists, add on a steal, add on a block, only 1 turnover, and 48 points. He scored, 29 or 28 of those points in the third quarter alone, where he shot 10 for 10 from the floor. He went 14 for 14 from the free throw line that night. This dude is off to another historic MVP-like start. And I promise you, he's not going to get the praise and the recognition he deserves league-wide and national media-wide because of, quote-unquote, what we like to call voter fatigue. However, he's only won it one time, but it'll still happen this year, man. But he has been out of his mind. And I'll start off by throwing it to you here. I know it's just the Washington Wizards, okay? Yeah. I got it. And we get a real test tonight, and we're gonna break that down as well. But it's just fun to watch this team, man. It's fun to watch them go in there and take care of business like this, to almost score 150 points. This team under Doc Rivers would never dare to score a $146.
Yeah,
they would never dare to let Joel Embiid play the entirety of the third quarter and just continue to feed him the way that they did. Dude, the way he was just getting to the same spot of the floor in that third quarter to kind of break that little half zone they were putting together. I mean, it was just automatic, and Washington had no idea what to do. Daniel Gafford had no idea how to respond to it. He was lights out. We'll get into the other pieces as well. Nicholas Batum makes his debut. Marcus Morris makes his debut. Nick Nurse stays on fire. But this team, man, talk to me about them.
Yeah, they just they continue to do what they're supposed to do, man. And that's dominate these bad teams. And I think that's the big highlight. It's like, yes, they're playing like the Trailblazers, the Raptors, but they're taking care of business. And that's the biggest thing. Like when you talk about Joel Embiid, 2 straight games now where he's played the Raptors and the Wizards, or the Suns, excuse me, the Suns and the Wizards, and doesn't have to play in the entire fourth quarter. And I think it just speaks to how deep this team is, and not only just the depth, but the identities and the type of players that you have on the team, because now you don't see those huge bucket droughts whenever Embiid leaves the game. And that's the crazy part about it. I do think part of that is Nick Nurse as well, obviously. Like, it's not just the player types. It's not just the fact that you have a Nick Batum that can come in and go 4 for 4 of his first 4 shots, 3 for 3 from the 3-point line. It's not just Kelly Oubre able to give you 20-plus points as like a fourth option. It's not just those things. It's also when Nick Nurse is leaving those guys on the floor versus taking Embiid off of the floor. And I think that's what's been working so far. But you look at this game, I mean, Embiid, puts his handprint all over the game with the 48 points, obviously dominating Gafford. Not only does the 48 points and the efficiency and the unstoppable nature of Joel Embiid as a scorer, not only does it help the team from a scoring set, it helps the team in other areas as far as getting other guys scoring opportunities. So you see the 6 assists, the 1 turnover. You only had 1 turnover between Embiid and Maxey put together. Maxey had 0, Embiid had the 1. And so when you're looking at your 2 best players with 1 turnover and 70 points in this game, Maxey had 22, Embiid had 48. So 70 points on the dot between your 2 best players, 1 turnover and 16 assists, or 17 assists, right? Maxey with 11.
Another season high, another career high for him.
That's a beautiful game. That's an A+ game. That's all you need to do whenever you're going against a team like the Wizards. And Maxey's the other guy, right? The 11 assists, you mentioned it, his career high. He's just playing efficient basketball. The 3-point shot isn't falling at the clip that we're used to seeing it at, and that's just because he just shoots lights out most of the time. He's still shooting league average, but we expect him to get over that 40% mark consistently. But even when that shot's not falling, he's finding ways to get over 20 points. He's finding ways to get other guys involved. And a lot of those Maxey passes to Embiid, they look exactly like Harden passes. And if Maxey is going to be able to play make like this, man, I'll say it again. I know I said it on the last show, I believe. But Maxey is 100% better to have the ball in his hands right now, but especially come playoffs compared to James Harden. Like, his ability to finish, his ability to hit tough contested shots, floaters, layups in the lane, on top of the efficient shooting from the 3-point line, on top of the now playmaking ability that he's showing. What can you say, man? There's just no argument against it when you look at the way Harden struggled last year.
He's not a black hole. He's not a black hole.
He's not. Right? He's not a guy that dominates the ball either, right?
He's not going to dribble the ball through the floor for 22 seconds.
We're at times this season asking Maxey to be like more aggressive or want the ball more. And maybe he doesn't need to. Maybe this is just the way Nick Nurse's offense is meant to be. And it's not meant to stick in one guy's hands outside of maybe Joel Embiid when he's on fire. And I think that's a fine way to operate. As long as you're keeping all the guys involved. Did want to shout out D-Melt, man. 3 for 4 from the 3, or 4 for 5, something like that.
A lot better, man.
14 points in this game. This is a game where Kelly Oubre couldn't get the ball in the net. Well, who steps up? It's D-Melt this game to get you 14. So they're getting it from a lot of different areas, man. Overall, I loved what I saw in that game. And so far this season, obviously.
They are. Tobias Harris just with a light 18, 5 assists, 5 rebound, and a steal kind of night on 6 of 11 shooting. Like, the dude is just as efficient as he gets. Obviously, they were blasting the number all over the broadcast the other night about how he and Jokic are the only two players to average 20 plus this year on 60 plus percent shooting from the floor. And Tobias is, if Tobias continues to slide into this role and not get too high or too low, he's going to continue. He's not going to shoot 60 plus percent for the season. He's probably going to shoot over 50% from the season, 53, 54%.
And another thing with Tobias, something as we were talking through it, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm looking at Batum's numbers. I'm looking at Marcus Morris, getting the nod in this game, finally getting on the court. Tobias has more competition at his position than he's ever faced.
They are loaded at the wing position, and that is something that you and I
can't afford to come out and be shy.
Shortly after, they added Pat Bev and Mo Bamba, and they did a little bit here and there at free agency. I mean, we came on here and said, dude, this team just has no wings. They have no size, no length at that position. And then by the time the season starts, it feels like 100 bodies he can throw out there at that spot to fill in there. I will say this. So Nicholas Batum makes his debut, obviously comes out, starts 4 for 4 from the floor, hits his first 3 threes. Or this dude fit like a glove right off the jump, right? And it's not just the shooting, right? He's kind of awkward looking. I know people are talking about his resemblance in the jersey number being similar to Al Horford and so on and so forth, but he doesn't look like he's the most athletic, whatever. He's getting a hand in for a deflection on defense, right? He's helping out on both sides of the ball. And that's the one thing I wanted to shout out, man.
He's
with
full
Nick
court
Nurse
pressing.
Nick Batum's Nick Nurse and all of these other guys, right? All of these new guys.
Yeah.
You mentioned how there's no scoring drought when they go to the non-Joel minutes. And obviously, not only are they able to stay afloat, they've been extending leads with Joel off the floor as well. Yeah. The one thing that's been sticking out to me, and it's great to see because there's a number of guys on this roster that have 1 year left that are trying to draw attention to themselves for their market this offseason, whether that's here or elsewhere. They're trying to advertise themselves. Kelly Oubre Jr., right? DeAnthony Melton's on the last year of his contract. Obviously, the new guys, I guess Batum has 1 year. I don't know what their contracts look like, essentially.
Pretty sure they got to be expiring. That's the only reason Daryl Morey would allow that trade to go through.
Correct. So my point is this. Yeah, we've seen Kelly Oubre Jr. drop 29, 20 plus. He's been incredible outside of the other night. We see Batum come in and shoot the way he did. Marcus Morris, Robert Covington had 7 points the other night. But the thing I'm loving, and DeAnthony Melton has struggled before last night. The thing that I'm loving is that with these other guys, that even when they're not shooting well, even when they're not super involved in the offense, they're finding other ways to impact the game. They're bought in defensively. They're bought into the game plan, to the motion in the offense.
Yeah,
dude. Even Marcus Morris. I mean, he played it felt like 6 minutes the other night. I watched him get his hand on the ball 3 different times on defense for a pass deflection, for a block shot out of bounds, stays with them. He gets involved in that way. Obviously, Patrick Beverley is just the epitome of finding ways to impact the game without scoring. DeAnthony Melton was struggling to start the year shooting the ball, scoring the ball. But guess what? He was still having 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block. Kelly Oubre Jr., 3 points the other night. Shots not falling. He's the only minus in the plus minus category for the starting lineup. 5 rebounds, an assist, a steal, a block.
Yeah.
Finding ways to impact the game. And that's huge, dude, because for a guy like Kelly Oubre Jr., who averaged 20 last year, who's just trying, and he's playing for the league minimum, and he's just trying to get himself paid this offseason.
Yeah.
What's he want to do, Scotty? He wants
to
get
those numbers right.
But when he's not able to do that efficiently, he knows to stop chucking. See, that was the thing the other night. 1 for 5. That's fine, man. You're going to have off nights. The question I think a lot of Sixers fans had is Kelly going to continue to jack up threes when he's off? Is Kelly going to continue to try to get to the hole when he's off and not getting calls? And is he going to have a 2 for 11, 2 for 13 kind of night? No. He stopped shooting, and he found ways to impact the game in other areas and other aspects. And that's
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge going forward.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the kind of the epitome around this team, man. And Kelly Oubre, he's one example. I think Tyrese Maxey, he's another example at times throughout a game. Like in this game, he had like 6 points going into halftime, right? Just no urgency to like hoist up bad shots or anything to get his numbers right. He's okay with just filling the stat sheet with assists. Like that's the way he was looking at it. So, like you look across this team and there's not too many guys that are just concerted about, getting buckets or this and that. The only guy that does look primarily focused on getting buckets is Tobias. But from his standpoint, it's good to see him be decisive and get to the rim and take some contested layups and finish at the rim, play physical. He's playing with his body this year. And that's something I like. It's almost like Nick Nurse said something to Tobias, like told him to stop being like a bitch or something. Like, because this man, he gets into the lane now. He dribbles into somebody's chest. He doesn't do it overbearingly and get an offensive foul. Goes up strong and finishing layups, man. And that's just something I haven't seen from Tobias this entire time, man.
He hunts smaller defenders.
Hunts mismatches. Hunts them.
And he doesn't pass out of them and try to reestablish.
You want him to be like that.
Yeah, he's getting the ball into the paint, backing you down and finding a way to finish over you. And it feels like that little 6-7 footer over smaller defender is automatic right now for him. The way that TR is talking about Maxey, the things that he's been hearing about how Nurse and his staff coach Maxey is unbelievable. Martian Lynch talking about the Furkan Korkmaz experience. That pass, I know I think it was TR commented about it earlier, maybe Martian Lynch. About the real quick pass to Embiid for the hammer slam. Like I don't know, dude. It's legitimately like he could run 13 guys right now.
It's crazy because you see that play, and that's like the epitome of their chemistry right now. That's Marcus Morris being inserted into the game for the first time, making that pass to Furkan. Furkan catches it with one hand and just delivers it to Joel, and it just speaks. And I did love I loved what Nick Nurse said, man. And it speaks to how I feel things should be ran and how Doc Rivers should have ran things. Like, you go with who's hot. It doesn't need to be a set lineup each night where, okay, tonight, Kelly Oubre is getting 25 minutes. Yep. Tobias is getting 30 minutes, down the line. Marcus Morris is getting fit. No, if Kelly Oubre is hot, he might get 30 minutes. If D Melt's hot from 3, he might get 30 minutes. And that's how it has to be, right? Like, it doesn't have to be these set like time frames and rotations, and Joel has to play the whole first quarter and only half of the third. No, he was hot in the third. What did Nick Nurse do? He let him play the entire third quarter so that he didn't have to play in the fourth. And so when you're operating like that, and he talked about it, he discussed Furkan Korkmaz specifically, because he was like, with this time getting guys acclimated, Furkan's getting his opportunity. Well, I saw what Furkan did in that first game when he got his opportunity. So let's see what he can do it again. Yeah. We'll just give him another opportunity. So he's giving guys what they earned. It's not necessarily just given based off of a contract or based off of a skill set. It's about what you're doing on the court, and that's the way it should be.
I'm only joking here, but one guy he tried to give an opportunity to the other night was Jaden Springer, and Jaden Springer came up a little short on the offensive side of things.
Can I ask something? Yeah. Why? Like, I do get it. I get it to an extent why we like Jaden Springer. But like, why does the fan base like rave about him? I'm not hating. I promise you. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a rotation spot. Like, he's another guy that doesn't have any offensive.
And he might grow into that. He might find his shot from the corner.
He's just doesn't seem ready to me. Like, to be in this rotation.
Our fan base loves a good homegrown story. And they love their blue coats guy. They love their blue coats champs. And he comes up and he's going to have a major look. The kid's crazy athletic. His bounce is ridiculous. He's found ways to impact the game defensively, but offensively, and I know it was in garbage time, they tried to feature him. His teammates tried to get him the ball. He tried to take advantage. It was bad. His 2 free throws were atrocious. He airballed a bunny. Like, he airballed a turnaround bunny in the middle of the paint.
Yeah.
And it was just like, all right, dude, like, at this point, it feels like you're 0 for 17.
It's like it feels like another, and I'm not saying they're the same player, but it feels like another Matisse Thybulle type of situation where great guy, works really hard, great defender, great defensive instincts, athleticism.
I love this.
No
I love this
offensive
comment.
incline.
I love this comment. He is uber athletic, bro.
That's fair.
But at some, and again, it's still super early, so I'm not trying to trash the kid at all. But at some point, like later down the road this season, if he continues to get playing time, by next year, he has to show something offensively. Because I'm sorry, bro, I don't give a damn about your athleticism.
Yeah.
If you can't score the rock at all.
Yeah.
If you're a 50% free throw shooter, if you're a nothing from the corner from three when you get limited opportunities. I love the athleticism, and he needs time to grow, and he barely played at all last year, and he's played a limited role this year. He gets a 1.5 to 2 years. He gets this year. Obviously, if things aren't working out, he's definitely not in the playoff rotation for me. And then he gets next year, or at least half of next year. But if he doesn't show anything offensively, he can't play.
And let me ask you this, because we talk about athleticism, seeing things that we haven't seen before. When you look at this rotation and what Jaden Springer gives you, I get it. In the G League, I watched a couple of his games. He was a good point guard. He was able to make plays. He was able to get in the lane, different things. He would shoot the 3-ball decently. But when you get to the NBA, it looks like they're using him more as an off-ball type of guard.
Yeah.
And it's not looking good because of that reason. And this team, you just can't afford to have the ball in Jaden Springer's hands bringing the ball up. Like, that's just not going to happen over Patrick Beverly, DeAnthony Melton.
No, I'm all for giving him opportunities. I said to you the other day, if DeAnthony Melton continues to struggle offensively, and if Springer can give you anything, he's not a bad 2-guard to start next to Maxey. Yeah, you're probably undersized, but he's really good defensively. He's athletic, and if he scores it all in the starting 5, it's a positive.
Like, based on what he has given you when he gets into the game, why not just give those minutes and see what KJ Martin can do with those minutes? Like, a guy that has averaged over 10 points per game. He is uber athletic as well. He's a little bit taller. He gives you more size. I don't know. I'm
a struggle for me. A struggle for me, and it's probably why it's a good thing I'm doing this with you and not on the Sixers coaching staff, is when you're trying to win a championship, and I get it, before the season started, a lot of people were talking about passing on this season and punting on the season and going into next year with salary cap and money and so on and so forth. My thing is, I'm still trying to win a championship. So I struggle with balancing trying to build up and grow younger talent while maintaining a championship rotation. So my point is, like, I'm all for trying to help Jaden Springer grow and become a part of this rotation. But down the line, if he's still not doing what I need him to do offensively at all, he cannot play at the end of the season.
Yeah. Sorry. I agree, man. I agree. And I think there is a balance that comes with that you're speaking on, is like balancing out development versus competing. And that's something, Doc Rivers, I feel, struggled with heavily.
1,000%.
Right? Maxey, his first year, obviously, Maxey probably should have been playing in his first season in a regular rotational role, right? Like, he is that good. He is that quick. He brings a different facet. We just didn't see that. But I don't think we're getting that with Jaden Springer right now. Yeah. And that's kind of the difference for me. And that's the same thing. I would put Paul Reed in that bucket, man. Like, I know we gave him that contract, and that's kind of the kicker right now. If he's not cutting it, we have so many guys that can play that 3 or 4 spot right now. Once again, Tobias on a different level. He's a starting caliber player that can average 20 plus points, but there's heavy competition at the 3 and 4 spots on this team. So at any time,
playing better, at least
guys can get relieved. Yeah, B-Ball Paul has been better. I will give him that. We'll see what he's on tonight. May come in handy. I saw Marshawn Lynch's comments about the lineup. Apparently, Derek White is going to be out, so I would imagine
again
that means Al Horford's going to get the start. So maybe you do go a different lineup tonight. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It does change their lineup, and it shortens that Boston bench. So let's get into that, man.
Yeah.
To Marshall Lynch's point, the East is vulnerable, and we are arguably the deepest team in the East this year. And I'm not so sure that it's even arguable, right? When you talk about true contenders, right? Like I'm not paying attention to, I don't know, the 8 seed and their depth, and if they can compete with the Sixers' depth, just in terms of personnel. But I'm talking when you look at the Bucks, when you look at the Celtics, hell, you can look at the Heat, you look at us, you look at the Cavs. The Sixers are the deepest team. And I'm pretty sure they started them together last game when Derek White missed last game. So I'm pretty sure that is
Derek White is the regular.
Wait till we talk about their bench.
Yeah.
Wait till we talk about Boston's bench. But to his point, they are vulnerable this year, man. And imagine saying how deep the Sixers are because of that. But I'll say this. One thing that I need to show out tonight, and not only are the Sixers deeper talent-wise, they have a lot more winning type of players coming off their bench. Higher IQ type of players that have been on teams that maybe haven't won championships, but have made deep playoff runs, right? Marcus Morris played for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
When they were taking us out, and when Ben Simmons and Rocco and Covington and all, or Rocco is coming, and Saric, were here before. Batum with the Clippers has made runs. So my point is, I need those guys continue to show their experience, their IQ, their everything tonight, compared to Shake Milton and George Niang. And that wasn't cutting it in the past, not only because of talent, they just didn't know how to close out great teams like the Boston Celtics. We're not going to talk matchups. We're not going. Well, we can talk matchups. We're not going to talk keys to victory, Sound Stars. We're going to be live on this channel tonight, 6 p.m., breaking down this matchup on DSM pregame live. But we are going to talk about what this test means, Scotty, because you and I, dude, you did. I promise you, you did. Sam Howell, Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard. I've been banging the table since night one. I told you, Scotty, night one, I watched the Celtics' first game against the Knicks because I had to put a bet in on the Celtics, right? They ended up winning. That bench is horrifying. And if you take Derek White out of the equation and slide out Horford off of it, that's another person off the bench. And they're just not good enough, dude, by any stretch of the imagination. But my point is, you and I love tests to see where this team is. And you've called it a litmus test. Hell, the players and the coaching staff last night were calling this a litmus test.
Yeah.
So I ask you, how important is this game tonight? Now, you play the Celtics 3 more times. You play them again at the Wells Fargo Center a week from today. So you're going to get them back very quickly and see just how you match up in a week as well. And I know we took away a ton of positives from that Milwaukee Bucks loss, and the Sixers could have won that game, right?
Yeah.
But you're 5-1. You did ultimately lose to the Bucks, who were chasing in the East. You win 5 straight against the Trailblazers, the injured Suns, the Raptors, so on and so forth. If you turn around and lose to the Celtics, no matter how tough you play them, again, 7 games in, and we're looking great. We're fun.
Yeah.
But again, where does that put us, right? Is that 2 steps backwards if you lose to the Celtics tonight?
No, I don't think it is. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when we go into this game, because it is game 7 of 82 this season. It's not even an in-season tournament game. So the higher stakes aren't even on this game. But it is a big game for the Eastern Conference. And as you mentioned, it is a litmus test to see not only where the Sixers are, but the Celtics as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Celtics are 5-1 or 6-1 right now coming into this game, coming off their first loss to the T-Wolves the other night. So it is going to be interesting. I think these are both teams that are going to be looking for their big win tonight. Obviously, the Celtics coming off a loss, and then the Sixers just looking for their first contender win, right? Like against a true contender. We beat the Suns. No Devin Booker, no Bradley Beal in that game. So not a real contender game. This is that game, even without Derek White, right? That's still a really good Boston Celtics team that you're going to need to compete with this whole season. So it is important, but I think the win column isn't as important as how it looks. And whether you win or not, whether you lose or not, you can't get blown out of this game.
No.
And you can't get wiped up on your home floor. I can't
No.
see shells of guys' selves in this game. And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, I can't see Maxey come out, get 2 straight 20 and 10 games, average 26 points on the season so
There's
far.
another guy. There's a more
And then
important
come
guy.
out and give you 15 and 6 tonight on bad shooting. Like, can't have Embiid give you 48 against the Wizards, 29 in one quarter, come out, shoot 25 points on bad shooting and 6 rebounds. I can't have Tobias go back into his shell, right? And not look like himself. I want to see Kelly Oubre come out and look aggressive and look like him. So all of the above, I think what you're getting at, Tobias is the guy that you worry about the most when it comes to that.
I just flash back to that playoff series, man.
That's the biggest thing for me, though. I would say wanting guys to look how they've looked confidence-wise throughout the season so far in this game tonight, because let's be honest, the elephant in the room, the Celtics.
I know it's a litmus test. I know they understand that. I know it's a rival. I know it's the team that just knocked them out of the playoffs in 7 games. I get all of that. The Sixers need to treat this game as a mindset like it's just another game. And what I mean by that is the Tobias Harris mindset, the Joel Embiid mindset, right? Where you come out and you look the same confidence-wise and mentally like you did against the Washington Wizards. You don't shell up, right? Tobias isn't hesitant to pull up from 3 when he's open because it's the Celtics. And Embiid isn't getting frustrated when he doesn't get a call or two because it's the Celtics. And then it starts affecting his body language on the floor. That's what I mean by just another game. They know it's more than another game. They know it's a true test. But you have to keep that confidence level and that mentality the same as Monday night, as Saturday afternoon. Because if you don't, and you show that the Celtics are in your head to a sense, that's going to be a problem moving forward for fans and for the Sixers team. And again, we're going to break it all down tonight. But Tobias, man, I mean, Scotty, I felt like I can go back and check the box scores, but 2 points in one game, 8 points in another game.
Game 6 was the most disgusting game that he's probably played in the Sixers uniform.
Yeah, I need to see him continue to look like he has the first 6 games of this season.
It's like Nick Nurse has been preaching all season. Expect to win. That is the motto around this team, is expecting to win. And I agree to an extent with Marshawn Lynch's comment here. We will not be the Cowboys after losing and feel a sense of encouragement.
Yeah,
I agree to an extent. The only thing I would say is that basketball is a little bit different from football, where you're only going to see the Cowboys twice. The Cowboys only see the Eagles twice in a season. Right. So you lose that game this early in the season against the Eagles, kind of sets the tone for your entire season. Right. You play the Celtics next week in Philly again. So, like, I would mark this game as like your litmus test. Next week's game is the one. If you lose this game, you have to win that one on your home court. The second game in Philly, right? You could look at it either way, I guess, at the end of the day. But I do think it's a little bit different when you look at 1 out of 82 versus 1 out of 17.
1,000%.
So, like, I get it. I do, because we want to declare this team as different this early in the season. And
we do.
And kind of do that if they beat the Celtics handily tonight. But still, at the end of the day, the Celtics are figuring out things. The Sixers are figuring out things.
I think
this isn't where they're going to
be. A big calming factor is the fact that you do get them again in a week's time on your home floor. So you know you're going to see them again if things go south. Because if not, I do agree to a sense where if you didn't see the Celtics for another 2 months or something like that, and you didn't get another contender for 2 weeks or something like again, like this fan base would just be struggling with the fact of, well, we beat X, Y, and Z, and that's great, but we lose to the Bucks and we lose to the Celtics.
And you have some matchups against the Pacers and the Pistons in between this matchup and the next
one, right? So if you lose this one and then you come out and win those 3, but then lose the next one, same conversation. We're going to continue to go in a circle tonight, man. It's only game 7, but it's important to me. It's important to me to
I don't want to undermine it. It is a very important game.
the job. The last time the Celtics were here in Philadelphia, they broke our hearts when we thought this team was different. We were 5-6 minutes away from heading to our first Eastern Conference Finals appearance in over 2 decades, and they did not allow that to happen. The Sixers have to come out there tonight and take care of business, and everything's pointing to that, man. Like the Sixers have the coaching advantage now, something we could not say a year ago, right? They had the coaching advantage. They're not just deeper. They are 1,000% deeper than this Boston Celtics team.
Yeah.
And they also have the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
You can throw me your Jason Tatum, and you can throw me your no left-handed Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps has been great, and Drew's the glue, and blah, 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 blah. We have excuse me. We have the MVP on the floor.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
That
Sixers
is
should go out there and try to take care of business.
The last thing I would say about this game before we get into the actual game tonight in the pregame show. So be sure to check that out. Also, Scotty Talks NBA tonight around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be live. Scotty Talks NBA right before Sixers pregame. So check that out as well. But nonetheless, last thing I'll say on the Celtics matchup before tonight, I need Embiid to do it against the Celtics. Like, all is fair. Like, it's great performance. I'm not undermining the performances from before against Portland and Phoenix and what the last one, the Wizards.
Yeah.
Do it against Boston, man. Like, not 48, not 29 in one quarter.
Because you already didn't do it against Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Like, it was the first game of the season. I get that. But he was the negative we were talking about the next morning.
Exactly.
So
yeah, Celtics to put Tanner McKee on it. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no matchup, and Al Horford is a year older. Kristaps Porzingis is not guarding Embiid, so
never has.
Are they throwing at him? Like
Luke Cornett is who they're going to throw at him. I mean, I'm sure they're going to
Robert Williams,
right?
In a conference with Embiid, they got rid of Robert Williams, so
they're going to throw
the logic there, the disrespect.
They're going to throw Horford on them. That's the bottom line.
That's the plan.
But I'm super pumped to see how Nick Nurse decides to attack the Celtics team on both sides of the floor. Excited to see the depth. Like I said, man, like that.
Can I give you
Batum? Can he come out and be a difference maker?
I'm going to look into this more. This is like my NBA mind spinning. I want to look back at the Spurs teams with Tim Duncan and Tony Parker.
Yep.
And I want to see how they compare to the Sixers team, because there's a lot of things in my head that is like that is clicking right now. Like when we were talking about Nicholas Batum earlier, I was thinking, that's like a Greg Popovich, like San Antonio Spurs type of role player, like just that 3-and-D corner specialist, full court presser, willing to play defense, lengthy. Patrick Beverley, he's like a Spurs type of role player, sets the tone, gritty, comes in on defense, will run the offensive unit, get steals, rebounds, do all the gritty work. So I'm interested. I want to go back and just look at kind of some of the player profiles on that team and compare, because the thing that's gravitating me to that team is obviously Tim Duncan, Joel Embiid, the dominance there in the post, and then Tony Parker, Tyrese Maxey, the dominance from that point guard.
Who's our Manu? Is Tobias? Can Tobias be the Manu?
Yeah, that's the kicker. Manu Ginobili was a monster. Can Tobias or a Kelly Oubre be that caliber of player? I don't know. That's asking for a lot, but it's an interesting thought that came to my head as you were talking through like the Sixers' depth and some of the players they have on the roster. Marcus Morris, different specialists that they have, man. Deep team, man. I'm dreaming out here, so hopefully they can continue.
It doesn't feel
keep these dreams alive.
Another thing that doesn't feel for it. Let's switch gears here and talk some Eagles, man. As they head into the bye week, 8-1 in sole possession of the NFC East and the number 1 seed in the NFC. Obviously, schedule continues to stiffen up. Chiefs, Bills, Niners, Cowboys, Seahawks, so on and so forth after the bye week. And I know a lot of people's minds go there, but I want to look at the midway point here, Scotty, and talk about midterm grades. What are some of your concerns from the first half that you're looking at in the second half? What are some of your positives, some of the strengths the Eagles have shown that you can take away moving forward into into the second half. We're going to talk about it all, man. But
Yeah.
just in terms of their success, I want to touch on that for a second, because I think we get so caught up in just the week to week that this is another team we don't sit back and just appreciate in this city. And we've had a lot of that lately, and we haven't had a lot of ultimate success with it. We haven't had any rings, we haven't had any hardware to take home to ultimately say that, but we talk about it with Embiid, right? We talk like how for granted we take Joel Embiid, right, on a nightly basis. We talked about it with the Phillies, like just enjoy what you're watching right now because this is historic back-to-back years. The Eagles are the same thing, dude. I mean, when was the last time? I know the numbers already been thrown out there, but I forget. When is the last time that this team was 8-1 in back-to-back years? They come off a Super Bowl performance. They lose guys on defense. They add players on defense, so on and so forth. They're 8-1 to start the year. They beat the Miami Dolphins. They've now beat the Dallas Cowboys. So the schedule, you can't really even throw that in my face right now.
Yeah.
Do we take it for granted?
I think it's hard not to. I think it's hard not to take it for granted in that sense. And I do think we do. And it's something that I actually talked to like a couple of my boys, even my wife, over this last couple of days. Like as we've entered the bye week at 8-1, we're kind of at the real midway point of the season. And this team is still winning. Like Jalen Hurts is still that guy. Like this team is still doing the things that it needs to put itself in position to win a Super Bowl. And to that point, I think we just need to sit back and appreciate it at some points in this season. Like, just live it week to week. I think we get so far strung out on this tough
in the
schedule
big picture and winning
big
the
matchups coming up. Well, we're in it now. Like, we don't need to look forward ahead a week or anything like that. We can look in this week. It's going to be the Chiefs, and then the next it's going to be the Bills, and then the 40. Like, we can just stay in each week and treat each week as a potential Super Bowl matchup in reality, or a potential NFC championship matchup. Like, this is where we can go. And I just think week to week, appreciating the wins, while I think Philadelphia fans also like to be highly critical and hold their team account. And that's fine. And I think, you know, I saw Chile's comment here, TR's comment, Jalen Hurts an A, not an A+. And I think this is the perfect example of what I mean. Jalen Hurts compared to the rest of the league, A, I agree. Jalen Hurts compared to his own standard that he has set, I would say B+. And that's the way I would put it. Jalen Hurts is having a spectacular season in NFL terms, in MVP standings, all across the board. But he is turning the ball over. He did lose the game against the Jets with 3 interceptions, right? So there's little things mixed in there. He's not running the ball as effectively due to the injury. It's not necessarily his fault, right? But on his standard and on the Eagles' standard so far this season, maybe it hasn't been up to par, right? But I think from a holistic standpoint, any team, any fan would trade their team right now for the Eagles' place at 8-1 and at the top of the NFL. And for that, I think we need to be grateful and just appreciate week to week how special it is. I asked yesterday in one of the group chats I'm in, I asked, like, is AJ Brown like the greatest acquisition that we've ever made in Eagles history? Like,
he is
outside of like drafting someone, right? Drafting Jalen Hurts or drafting Carson Wentz and getting a Super Bowl out of it. The acquisition, the trade for AJ Brown and what we've gotten so far. He's already got 1,000 yards this season. Like, he might be the greatest trade we've ever completed.
He is now, because I said this 2 weeks ago. He's the greatest receiver the Eagles have ever had. And up until this point, the greatest receiver the Eagles ever had, even though in a short stint, was traded here, and that was Terrell Owens.
Yeah.
So yes, if now AJ Brown to me is the greatest receiver we've ever had, he's the greatest acquisition we've ever had, because he has surpassed Terrell Owens in that department.
I agree. It is,
and
funny,
to TR's point, for the price as well. Like it's just.
It is funny. I was listening to Adam Schefter on 97.5 this morning when I was picking my wife up from work. And he was talking about how the Eagles, they haven't been winning by as much this year, and they haven't been as dominant. So it's not as impressive as 8-1 was last year. And so to that question, I think we have to ask like everybody outside of Philadelphia that just continues to move the goalposts for this team. Is it more impressive when we blow like bad teams out last season because you called our schedule terrible?
Right.
Is it better when we blow those teams out than when we beat the hardest schedule in the NFL and we're 8-1?
Yeah, I would
With
disagree with
some
what he
close
said,
games.
man. I would disagree with what he said, and I think it's why a lot of people piss me off with how they
Yeah,
evaluate wins and losses, right? Because yeah, they were beating the dog shit out of teams through 9 weeks last
yeah.
year. So it looked maybe more dominant to you, but to your
Can't have
point,
both.
when you talked about strength of schedule, who did they beat up into that? I mean, up to that point, the Minnesota
Yeah,
Vikings had the best record of teams they had beaten early on in the year.
yeah,
They've beaten the Dolphins, who I get it. The Dolphins can't beat good teams. Like, that's the running joke now. They're 6-3. But they beat that offense, slowed that offense all the way down,
yeah,
and they've beaten the Cowboys, who they obviously have struggled with over the last handful of seasons. So
yeah,
when you look at it from that perspective, they've already taken care of business 2 more times through this point of the year than they did through this point of the year last
yeah.
season.
And so when you think about like the trends and just going back to the point of appreciating this team, Jalen Hurts, right? And I was just talking about him earlier. Like I said, in the standard of the NFL, he's an
Yeah.
MVP candidate right now, top 3. Like he's 26-3 since the Eagles started 3-5 in his first year starting under Nick Sirianni. 26-3. And mind you, in all 3 of the losses, there was 4 Eagles turnovers that caused those losses to happen, right? The Commanders game comes to mind, the Jets game earlier this season. And so what does that tell you? It tells you that the Eagles lose to themselves. Like they don't lose to teams. They beat themselves. Like the only team, the reason people say that the Eagles' schedule is easy is because they can't play themselves. Literally, they can't. That's the best team they could play, and they can't play themselves. But the only time you see them losing is when they beat themselves. And that's the biggest thing for me. And I think that's why we do find ourselves sometimes not being grateful week to week, because we have won so much in the last 2 seasons so far that you get a little spoiled, I think. As we were losing to the Jets, I'm like, oh, this is a first loss. Like, I don't want to lose. Like, you know what I mean? You're kind of acting like a child at a certain extent for the first loss.
Right. How do they lose to that team?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we can't. You almost like find yourself like not crying, but like, no, we're actually going to lose. We're not invincible. And like, no team is invincible. Injuries are going to happen and things are going to happen. So, yeah, to answer your question, I think we need to be a little bit more grateful, but when better to recognize that than at the midway point of
to
the
get
season.
into our concerns and strengths, I will
Yes,
say,
sir.
do we take them for granted? Yes, but I also think that there is some added confusion this team and coaching staff gives the fan base that does make us a little bit ungrateful at times. We don't just do it all on our own, right? We don't just completely on our own take this team for granted when they're showing week in and week out why they're the best in the league. No, they have shown some major concerns through the first 9 weeks, and we're going to talk about them right here. Now, I saw that Marshawn Lynch commented about it here, and this would be my first concern and first question mark to you, man. And specifically, I'm looking at the corners here. And I'm looking at Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Now, obviously, slot corner has been a major issue. Bradley Roby comes back after the bye. Hopefully, he can kind of fix things, patchwork things there in the slot. Kevin Byard gets another week acclimated to this system. Hopefully, he continues to grow and be better for this team. But I'm just confused by it. And I want to know how much of it is on personnel and the players, and how much of it is just simply on scheme and coverage by Sean Desai, because we've gone back and forth week to week with how Sean Desai has looked this year. Sean Desai, in some instances, is the reason the Eagles are in games or won a game. But in other instances, he's the reason it's still close or the reason it's coming down to the wire, so on and so forth. I'm just confused as to what's the real issue here. Is Darius Slay and James Bradbury just another year older, and they're not the top 2 corner duo? We legitimately thought we had one of the best corner duos in the league. Now they're concerned. Is that them, or is that just how they're being used and the soft zone coverages Desai deploys out there, man? Because one or the other has to be fixed in the second half of this year.
Yeah.
Like either they need to just get better or Sean Desai needs to adjust things, because we talked about it before the Dallas game. The secondary helping the D-line and the D-line helping the secondary. I know we had 5 sacks and we had 10 quarterback hits, but at the end of the day, it still felt like Dak Prescott could do whatever he wanted and had a lot of time back there for a majority of the game. Now, why is that? It ain't because our front four stinks. It ain't because there's no pass rush. It's because he's able to get the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's my major concern.
I think it's interesting, and I do think it's probably the biggest concern about this team is the pass defense in general, right? Like the run defense has been the strong suit. You talk about one of the strengths, the run defense is one of the strengths of this team, right? They're first in the NFL as far as rushing yards allowed per game. They make offenses one-dimensional, but is that by choice or is that just by what is benefiting the other offense, right? Are they just not running the ball because they can pass the ball so easily against this team? And I think that's where the concern and the thought of weakness comes from, is because we don't know if it's just Slay and Bradbury and maybe they're just cooked, right? Or is it the scheme? Because you will see Eli Ricks guarding CeeDee Lamb in the slot 9 out of 10 times in the game versus Dallas. So it makes you think like, well, do we not trust our corners against these wide receivers? I think along with the corners and the slot corner concerns, I think the linebackers in coverage is a concern as well, right? Like
middle of the field.
None of those, the linebackers, they make good plays in running in the run game. They're able to get in the backfield, make tackles, but they just don't make a ton of spectacular turnover worthy plays. And I think that's one of the big differences with this team this year. Last year, you had Kaiser White, who wasn't a world beater at the linebacker position.
No, but he was a former safety.
He's a former safety. He could get to the ball. He could get you turnovers. TJ Edwards, he was a tackling machine. He was a good linebacker for this team. And I think that is part of the problem. They have no playmakers in the linebacker department.
I agree. They don't have any coverage linebackers at all.
I think there's a disconnect as well since Kevin Byard got here, just in the fact that he hasn't gotten time to be acclimated.
I was just going to
get that shirt up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that to you. Now, I know he's not a linebacker, and they're going to be put in situations where they're one-on-one with a tight end or a running back at times, and they might get, exploited. But I think Kevin Byard, now being here after the bye for 3 weeks or so, I think Kevin Byard can be a difference maker over the middle of the field. I think that safety tandem of Reed, who has held solid since week 1, and the all-pro, Pro Bowl type of safety, as long as he gets right, and gets suited within this scheme. I think that's a difference maker over the middle of the field that can help those linebackers, or that can come down into coverage and be another coverage guy over the middle of the field. For this team.
I agree.
It's just the corners, man. I can't get over it. I really, because Maddox isn't coming back to fix that slot problem. And I don't know if Bradley Roby's the answer there. So you're always going to have that glaring hole.
Yeah.
Right there. Who'd I say? Oh, it was Byard out my list.
Marshall Lynch, man, that man, it's funny. But no, I do agree with what you say. I think that's what you have to bank on as an Eagles fan and as the Eagles themselves, right? Their organization, as far as fixing this defense. I think part of that is, one, Bradley Roby getting healthy, maybe solidifying that that slot corner position, but also Kevin Byard just figuring it out and being in the spots where he needs to be to make plays. I will say I agree with Marshawn Lynch. Well, I not agree. He didn't say this, but this is what I took from it. Zach Cunningham has played the best out of the linebackers this season.
For sure.
But this is what I'll say. Zach Cunningham would be a great number 2 linebacker. So would Anthony Morrow. So would Nakobe Dean. We don't have a number 1 linebacker, and I think that's part of the issue, although I think you can survive if Kevin Byard, Reed Blankenship has been good. If Kevin Byard can be good to great, I think you can survive without having a huge playmaker in the middle of your defense. But Yeah, that is the biggest
Yeah,
concern by far. As a whole, I would say the corners, the middle of the field, that
right.
the whole passing defense
Especially with
got to
who
be
you're
shored
about
up.
to come out playing in the second half. And again, I know it
Yeah,
sounds crazy because we thought that when they played Tua,
yeah,
and they were fine against them. So
yeah,
it's going to be a week-to-week thing. That's defensively. The only thing I can complain about defensively is the sigh and the coverage.
yeah,
What's the issue? Is it the players? Is it the sigh? We'll have to figure that out. Offensively, there's two things I'm looking at here before we get into the positives.
yeah,
The turnovers. And it starts with Jalen Hurts, but it also
yeah,
trickles down at DeAndre Swift. Got to take better care of the ball. Dallas Goedert obviously had a couple miscues early on in the season with the ball in his hands.
yeah,
You have to take better care of the football, especially against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, so on and so forth. You
yeah,
cannot just hand teams like you did the Jets the ball 3 or 4 times. You're going to lose a majority of your games.
yeah,
The other thing I will say, Brian Johnson has been 1,000% better over the last couple of weeks. The red zone efficiency is up. He's getting creative. The personnel is getting better. The usage, everything's getting better. The one thing I'm struggling with Brian Johnson still is, does he know how to call a game situationally? And what I mean by this is he gets conservative or he gets too aggressive. There's no
in
balance
between.
with how the game
Yeah,
is going for me. So what I mean by that is this. It would be easy to say that Brian Johnson doesn't know how to call a game late, but that's not true. Because
yeah,
both
we've
times they've
seen it.
gotten down against the Washington Commanders, he's continued to call beautiful games, and Hurts and AJ connect, and they
Yeah,
go ahead and win and drop 38 points. So he knows how to call games late. But then you watch the Cowboys game, and situationally, he didn't know how to call this game once they got up 11. He
yeah,
got too conservative. Scotty, it's on the players. We talked about the deep ball, the decision by Hurts, the fumble with Swift and AJ. I get that. But to not pick up a first down on your final 3 drives of the game once you go up by 11 is
yeah,
inexcusable. So what I mean by him calling plays situationally, I don't think he's quite figured out or mastered when to put the foot on the gas, when to hit the brakes a little bit, when to whatever, because it was too simple against
yeah,
Dallas, man. They got up 28-17 and he just tried zone run, zone run, zone run, zone run. And then at the worst possible time calls a pass play.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what
No,
I'm looking at, man. When you're playing the Bills at home or the Chiefs on Monday Night Football on the road, and this is a 4, 5, 6 point game late, and
yeah,
you're up, can you close it out?
yeah,
Because Shane Steichen last year, those are the
yeah,
drives we were looking for. We were
yeah,
looking for we're going to run the ball, but you still can't stop us type of shit. And you're not going to get the ball back. That's what I was hoping to see versus
yeah.
Dallas. And he had none of that.
You
So,
know, you know what I think feeds directly into that. It's one of my weaknesses for this team as well. I agree on the turnovers, especially the situational play calling, but the turnovers as well. You mentioned it. Hurts, Swift, Gainwell, who I have marked down here. You have 8 interceptions, 6 fumbles, 3 of them lost. And then on the other side of that, not just turnovers for the offense, but
creating
lack
turnovers.
of turnovers for the defense. Now, looking back, I didn't realize we actually have 6 fumble recoveries on the season. Now, you have some of those, like the end of this
Right.
last
CD
game, the only
Lamb doesn't
turnover.
matter. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not like a real turnover. That didn't like change the game. But they have 4 interceptions, 6 fumble recoveries. The 4 interceptions is what concerns me. Got to have more ball hawks out there on the field. You had last season, right, where you had CJ Gardner-Johnson gather 6 interceptions just by himself. Right now, you got Slay and Reed Blankenship only with 2 each. The main concern for me, though, Marshawn Lynch's comment here with the offense, I think it feeds into exactly what you're talking about. And the truth is, for the last 4 weeks, they just haven't been able to run the football. And it's a problem. Now, whether or not they are not choosing to run plays, that's one
Right.
thing. The other side of that is just when they are running the football,
Right.
they're not getting
I
Swift
don't
out
think
there
they're
for over
creative
100
enough with
rushing
it, man.
yards.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think they're creative. When I look at those
yeah,
run calls and those designs late in the game, now I get it. You're missing Cam Jurgens, right? And
yeah,
you were beat up on the offensive line for a little bit, but Like when I look, like when you're trying to ice the clock, like there's not for a single snap, Jalen under center, right? There's not there's not extra blockers on the line, right?
Yeah.
In that part of the game, there's not misdirection or motion.
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to line up with Swift or Gainwell next to me, and I'm going to turn and I'm going to hand the ball with my 5 offensive linemen. There was no Stoll and Calcaterra out there on the edge.
Yeah.
No, it was like he was trying to keep it a mystery if he was going to run or pass, but everyone knew it was a run and there was no extra help or protection. So it was way too simple.
I think part of it as well that kind of takes the complexness out of it, or the makes the scheme like simplified, is Jalen Hurts' injury, right? He's just not able to use his legs.
Yeah, that's another.
I think that's hampering the rushing attack as well, man. But all that being said, they're still 7th in the NFL, so there's still a top 10 rushing unit. I think a lot of that is based on those earlier games where we saw Swift go over 100 yards rushing.
70,
so
ridiculous.
We haven't seen that for quite a while. It feels like.
And what's that go to? It goes to a lack of kind of balance, right? And design and everything like that.
Been the AJ Brown show, and it's been great. We've seen a few Hurts 300-yard passing games, but we got to get back to what we know and what works in the cold season and what works in the playoffs, and that's running the football. And I think getting Cam Jurgens back healthy, that will help. Getting Hurts this extra week off with the bye week, all the way to that Monday Night Football showdown, that will help. But I think just the identity and the mentality of the team needs to adjust a little bit offensively to the rushing attack. 3.6 yards per carry for Hurts, man. I get the injury. That is hampering the rushing attack a lot.
No, it's
those would be my main concerns, along with you.
I agree, and I'll say this to end
and pass defense.
To end the negatives, me and Marshawn Lynch, I don't disagree with Marshawn Lynch often, but no, I have a major problem with that throw out of bounds in that spot. I get what he's saying, like yes, it's 1,000% better than a pick or a turnover in that spot. And when they did run the ball, they did fumble it the next possession. Yeah. So they almost had that same turnover in a different area. But my point is, man, like you can't stop the clock there. And the other thing I hate about the call as well and the decision to stretch it down the field, you need 3 effing yards.
Yeah.
What are you throwing a 25, 30-yard go ball down the boundary for? Like that's my thing. Like and if we don't trust Jalen enough not to throw a pick when he's looking over the middle of the field, well, that's a problem then in itself. So I get what you're saying. Like, a throw out of bounds is a lot safer than an interception, punt, and we hope for the defense. You can't stop the clock there. And it's just, I think the bottom line is it's not a high percentage throw on 3rd and short. If it was 3rd and 10, all right, you throw a go ball. I don't care. 3rd and 3, dude, you don't do that. You try to.
I think about like the deep shot and on a 3rd and 3 and like what it takes to have enough time to get that throw off. Like there's a lot of different factors in a deep pass like that in a late game situation where you ultimately just want a first down to run the clock out.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that can happen on that play. You saw it earlier in the game where Jalen Hurts gets blindsided, the fumble, right? And he's able to gather it back. Well, that could happen on that play when you're asking. Well,
especially, and I know it sounds ballsy because we would have been shitting our pants if they went for it on 4th and 1 or something. But the identity of this team the entire game was the fact that you don't need 10 yards. You need 9 because or 8, because if you get it into that area, they're not stopping the push. So why not run the ball, continue the clock? Maybe you don't get anything and you still have to punt. But odds are, behind that line, you should be able to fall forward for a yard and a half, 2 yards, sets up 4th and 1, and then I'm pushing it. But they 1,000% missed Dallas Goedert, and I did see his comment earlier about no fine on the hit. I tweeted it the second it happened. We talked about the other day. It was a dirty fucking tackle. Yeah. With that said,
not illegal, but it's dirty.
No. We talked about the negatives. The positives, I think the positives are just clear, right? I think the positives are the fact that they have yet to play a full 60-minute game. They have yet to play their best ball, and they're 8-1. So you're looking for that to come out. You're looking for the fact that they have turned the ball over, which is a negative, but it's not hurting them to that extent. It hurt them one time, right? So you're still 8-1. The AJ Brown show.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the positive.
That's like my number one.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
then for me, defensively, you talked about the run stopping, the pass rush for me. Yeah, it's not as prolific, it's not as flashy and shiny,
Yeah.
and doesn't have all the totals it had last year. But this pass rush, it's almost like making that Super Bowl run last year. And I know there's missing pieces and new pieces and rookies out there too, but it's
Yeah.
like this pass rush is just so much more efficient and timely
Yeah.
because of that experience. Like, dude, Leighton, you saw it in Dallas. You
Yeah.
saw so many different times this year, New England week 1, where they're not getting to the quarterback. The game plan for the opposing offense is get the ball out, get the ball out, get the ball out. But then when it matters most, final possession, last 2 possessions, they're about to score. Nope. Here comes Hassan
Yeah.
Reddick. Here comes Josh Sweat. Here comes Jalen Carter. Here comes Brandon Graham last week. They have just found ways to come up and make plays similar to their quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Making the biggest plays in the biggest moments, even if it's not over
It's
the course of an entire game.
It's so wild, man, because you look at kind of as you're talking through that, and we've talked through this team as a whole so far at the midway point. It almost feels like this team is closer to that 2017 team than last year's was. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Last year's team was excellent. Like one of the best Eagles teams ever. Like we can clearly see that from what they produced last year. But they were almost too perfect in the season, if that makes sense. And that's kind of what I've been talking about since we started talking about the Eagles on this show, is like we expect perfection based on last season, but in reality, the adversity that we've had to face, that the Eagles have had to face so early in this season, like every game outside of week 2 and week 3, I believe against the Vikings, against the Bucks, every game has came down to the wire, and that can be taken as a negative or a positive. I understand that, but in my perspective, taking it as a positive, because you look at what the season came down to last year, right? Came down to adverse moments, turnovers, and bouncing back from them. Bad defensive plays, right? Bouncing back from them. Comes down to one possession in the Super Bowl where James Bradbury gets called for a holding call in the red zone. Chiefs go on to win the game, right? Run the clock out. How many of those one possession games have we already had this season where the Eagles have come out on top and found ways to win in those moments? And the reason I say that, it speaks to exactly what you're talking about with the pass rush, is they have closers. They have guys that are going to make that big moment play, right? We already know the stats behind Hassan Reddick and his closing ability. Brandon Graham, we saw him show up in as the closer in the biggest game of all of our lives as Eagles fans, right? The biggest win of all of our lives. We see Josh Sweat last game come away with a big closing sack in that game against Dak Prescott. And so to that extent, it's this defense. It has not been knockout so far. It has not been stiff or the best in the NFL, but they do make big plays in big moments.
Yeah.
And I think that's one similarity that you could show to this team. They're learning how to win in adverse situation, the focus that it takes. Like, you look at this Cowboys-Eagles game, where did the Eagles win that game? It wasn't even necessarily in Jalen Hurts overall outplaying Dak Prescott or anything like that. It was the Eagles making critical plays that require a critical amount of focus in those moments. Brandon Graham not giving up on the 2-point conversion so that Dak steps on the outside line. There's no guarantee that Dak couldn't just dive in there, right? But Dak doesn't dive in there this time because of the effort that Slay and Cunningham gave on that last goal line attempt. So, like, all of these things you look at, it's the little things in the game, and it's the little things where the Cowboys failed. That's why the Eagles won. And it's been that way this entire season.
You know what that is, Scotty? That's winning ugly.
Yeah.
And people get it misconstrued that winning ugly is just by chance or it's luck or whatever.
Right.
No. It's become a talent for this team. Winning ugly has become a talent for this Eagles team. And I don't think people quite grasp that enough.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they got lucky at the end of the game. He stepped up. No.
It's not
because guess what? When it mattered more, when the Eagles needed points, when the Eagles needed something down 17-14, right after getting his knee caved in, what did Jalen Hurts do? dropped one in the bucket for 30-plus yards to Devontae Smith in the back of the end zone.
Call.
What did the very next drive, when the defense gets a stop on the Cowboys, what does he do to extend the lead? Goes right down the field, finds his man A.J. Brown, he falls into the end zone.
The Dolphins game.
Yeah.
Hurts throws a pick six out of the half. What does he come out and do? 2 straight drives down the field for 7 each time.
Right.
Takes
My point is, it's not prettier, man. Like that's the thing. If you ask me which team looked flashier, which team looked prettier on Sunday afternoon, it's the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Dak, 3 touchdowns, no picks,
yards.
375 passing yards, right? CeeDee Lamb, 190 plus receiving yards.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. You know what it reminded me of? The CeeDee Lamb performance specifically. It reminded me of Julio. You can have all these catches between the 20s, man. Rack up 150 yards if you want to. But you ain't touching the ball in the end zone.
No.
That's what it comes down to. Tight moments in the game, tight moments on the field in those red zone areas. Look at what that Eagles defense played terrible in that game. But they showed up in the huge moments in the red zone that held this Cowboys team to 23 points, man. That is the difference. And that it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. We'll see down the line what it is.
Because at one point or another, you kind of sit here and say, well, our time's running out, right? The clock's running out on this kind of the style in which you win. Or it's just become a part of who they are. They muck up the game. It's not going to be a pretty flashy 48-45 game. I know we've gotten high-scoring games against the Commanders, but in terms of these other teams, these competitors, you're not going to get that. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get 5-6 sacks, right? And you're going to get weird, timely strips, like fumbles, and it's just going to like that game Sunday was fun. It was hectic. It was crazy. It was back and forth. It made for a great Eagles-Cowboys game.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't the prettiest.
No.
At all.
I think this comment is spot on to what we're talking about right now. And it's actually funny the way Eagles fans are combating Cowboys fans and the way Cowboys fans are talking about this loss to the Eagles compared to the way Eagles fans talked about the loss to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because it is very similar, right? Like Jalen Hurts outplayed Patrick Mahomes, according to a lot of Eagles fans in the Super Bowl. And the numbers, you can't really argue with it. But who won the game? Who made the big plays in the biggest moments of the game to win the game? And it is the Kansas City Chiefs in that game. And this Cowboys game is the complete reverse of that, right? The Eagles are the Chiefs in this case, and the Cowboys are the Eagles in that case in the Super Bowl. And it shows the difference between this team and last year's team, I believe. And I think on the other side of that, we talked about how it can be good or bad. Once again, this team has not played a complete game yet this season. This defense has a lot of room to grow. And I think that's a good thing, man. Goddard's loss, that is something we'll have to discuss maybe Friday or something, because that is going to be a big loss. But I think they have enough people, Julio Jones, guys mixed in here that can make up for that loss just for the time being, at least.
The last thing I'll say before we wrap up the show, because I know we got to get out of here. Been over an hour and 13 minutes now. I think the Jalen injury, not calling it a blessing in disguise, because it's not a positive for this Eagles team. Yeah. But I think it has shown us something within him and within the rest of this team and this coaching staff. And what I mean by that is how many people last year were just talking about the roster fitting him and how he's able to take advantage of everything with his legs. And that's why the rushing attack is so dynamic and blah, 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 where you have this injury now and it's limiting his ability to scramble and to run and design plays. And what's that in turn limits the overall rushing attack. And it should limit his ability to climb the pocket, but yet he's still making big time throws, still making big time plays within the pocket. They're still 8-1. So it's not a good thing that Jalen's injured, but it has shown me something else.
Yeah.
Another way that he can still be successful, and another way this team and offense can still be successful.
Because imagine when he gets his legs back and he's able to use them again.
That's my point. exactly, 1000%.
What our defense is going to do. Like, if you're the Chiefs, right, and you're coming out of this bye week, how do you prepare for Jalen Hurts? Do you prepare for him as the pocket passer that he's been? Or do you prepare for him as the RPO legend that he has been in the past, right, that you saw in the Super Bowl? So it's like he has a lot of different ways that he's proven that he can beat you, as well as the Eagles. And to that point, man, I agree with everything you said there. I think that is a huge point coming out of the bye week. Hopefully he can get healthy, and hopefully this team can just continue to get healthier and put it all together.
They will.
But Marshawn
Lynch here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
To get us up out of here, man. No, I was just going to say, guys, if you are new to the channel, if you want to support it, we have broken DSM down into 3 YouTube channels to help with content. You know where to find it, what you're looking for. This obviously is the DSM Philadelphia YouTube channel. All things Philly sports, pregame lives, everything like that. If you want to support, if you like the content, subscribe. Scotty Talks NBA DSM is his own YouTube channel.
Yep.
Subscribe to that for all of your NBA content. And we also have the NFL Turf Talk DSM YouTube channel for all of your strictly NFL content as well. If you guys need, me and Scotty can drop all of those links into the comment once we hop off here for you guys to subscribe. But yeah, it is its own YouTube channel. Just there it is right there. That's what you can add on YouTube, Marshawn Lynch, and everybody else. Just because whatever it is, just trying to understand YouTube, the algorithm, how things work.
Yeah.
Not putting
the right audience.
All different avenues of content onto one channel. That's why we've broken them down into 3. So if you know what you're looking for, if you want to hear one thing and you're not interested in the other, you can just subscribe to that specific YouTube channel. With that said, guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Phaithful Phanatics Show. We will be back Friday morning talking about the Sixers Celtics matchup. How did they fare? Will it be a positive show? Will we have takeaways? Will we have positive takeaways to look forward to talk about? Is what I was trying to say. Jumbo mouth here.
The same old.
Yeah, and then we'll get creative when it comes to the Eagles and everything else. And MLB all season starting, Scotty, I could care less at the moment, but if once the Phillies make one signing, whether it's Josh Hader, whether it's Blake Snell, whoever it is, we're going to be talking about it, and somehow I'll get roped into wanting spring training back. So
got to.
So with that said, guys, don't forget, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at DSM_media, whatever you got to do. But have a great rest of your Wednesday, and go Sixers.
Go Sixers.